if you're buying pineapples, for example, to Canada, you can look up and see which countries are selling the most pineapples to Canada. And the reason why you need that is because you have to have a choice whether you export or import, and you have to know which countries are the top buyers of your product, and which countries are top sellers of the product that you're looking for. Again, depending where you are, whether you're exporting or importing. Okay? And let me illustrate it to you. First of all, in this handout, on the pages 4, 5, and 6, you'll find a complete tutorial to the Comtrade database, so that you could do it at home, at your whenever you have time to do that. And in order to illustrate how it works, let me give you the example. Let me run it on the screen right here. And with luck, we can do that. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is how it looks like. So this is the data extract interface. And there's a bunch of fields, a bunch of sections. So section 1 and section 2, don't really touch it. You leave it as is, standard settings. And I don't want to overload you with what those acronyms are, but just trust me, leave it as is. Then you have to identify three things. So either country of export or country of import, and the product itself. So I'd like to run the example from the audience right here, if you don't mind. So if you can give me the example of any, say, source country or target country that you're looking for in the product.
I'll look for Pakistan.
Mm-hmm. And importing or exporting?
Exporting.
From Pakistan to where?
No, like exporting from Canada to Pakistan.
Okay, so you want to look at a specific product?
Heavy machinery, gas excavator motors.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're looking for the data, basically what's the volume of the business, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So we can do that, and we can later expand it a little bit. So we can look up, for example, which countries export the most of machinery to Pakistan, not just Canada, just to give you the illustration how it works. And before we do that, any questions on why we do that? Is there an understanding why we need this data? So once again, just to emphasize, we need this data to identify the list of several markets that you either can source the product from or you can export the product. Other question?
No, I was about to answer.
Oh, good, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's go with heavy machinery, and we'll look for the volume of business between Pakistan and Canada at first. And then we'll look what other countries export the same product to Pakistan. Okay. So in order to do that, we're gonna plain change the section 3. In our case, the reporter again could be any. We can start with either Canada or Pakistan. It doesn't matter. But let's start with Pakistan. So we replace the reporters from all to Pakistan. And the trading partner, we put Canada. Okay. And then trade flow, we replace with import. So I want to know what's the volume of the machinery imports from Canada to Pakistan. Now, please raise your hands who is familiar with HS codes and what they are. Okay, so I guess everyone else is unfamiliar with it. Okay, good. So let me explain first what HS code is and how we use it in international trade. So HS code is the classification of all physical products that can be transported and traded internationally. So every single product that you can touch and feel is classified in a number of digits, actually up to 10 digits. Each 2 digits represent a category. In the general category, then the next 2 digits represent the subcategory, next 10 digits another subcategory, and so on and so forth, up to 10 digits. Now, what's important for international trade is that first 6 digits of HS code are universal around the world. So if, let's say, I don't know, let's say this screen, for example, has the HS code 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, then the first 6 digits will be the same everywhere in the world. And we can use those 6 digits if we know to find that trade statistics. And also going forward, just for your information, we also use this HS codes to find the information about duty rates. This is one of the probably number one use of the HS code is to identify your duty rate. Because when you open the custom start for customs code, you look it up, you find your HS code, and you find the duty rate. But in our example, we use it to find the trade data for that.
I'm sorry, that was which rate before the
Duty rate. Duty rate.
Duty rate.
Duty rate.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not going to be covered on this database, but going forward, you can use the same HS code to identify the duty rate. Okay. Now, if you know the HS code of heavy machinery, you can shortcut, or we can start typing, like for example, excavation equipment or something like that, and the system will show us some options. To be honest, because I didn't prepare that particular category, so I'm not sure how exactly it will work. But let's try, for example, excavation something. Yeah, bulldozers, graders, scrappers, and so. Is that the right?
The second one.
The second one? Okay. Okay, so we have selected this specific category that includes excavators. And then what we do is we hit the preview button and we have nothing. which is fine. First of all, we can try to replace the year with
I think it has to be the opposite. Like the recorder has to be Canada, and then Pakistan has to be the partner. No, like Canada exporting
Yeah,
to
Canada.
Pakistan.
No, but
Right.
kind of thought that.
Recorder is Canada.
But the
No.
okay. Let's assume. But yeah, the
Canada
way
and then or maybe
it's like import to Pakistan from Canada.
Oh yeah.
Okay, let's just remove Canada, just for the sake of the exercise, and put all, because maybe there's nothing exported from Canada.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So here it is. So Canada is not there apparently, but you see the countries that export the most of the heavy machinery to Pakistan, and you can also sort them and find out that, well, actually quite a lot of the volume is coming out of Korea, and then the rest of the countries is, well, it's pretty much meaningless. But anyways, if you are looking to import the machinery from to Pakistan, then those countries and the machinery manufacturers in those countries are your top choice, if you will. So this will help you to narrow down your search. If you wanted to find the machinery and you have this data, then you don't waste your time looking up, for example, for the machinery made in, I don't know. Well, actually, Canada is not there, right? So you probably won't do that, but you'd rather go and look up what is made in South Korea. Yeah.
What's probably for Canadian companies making that type of machinery, they're probably making it for U.S. providers,
Probably.
which is common, and then
Mm-hmm.
so it's not that it doesn't exist, but Canada's supplying U.S.
And they sell it.
And
Yeah, it's
they're
possible.
doing
Yeah, it's
it.
possible. Yeah, unfortunately, this database doesn't track it to this level. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So this data shows the for new goods or used goods, because I'm sure there's heavy machinery going out to Canada, used equipment. So under this kind of like the HS code would include the new ones, or
Should be all.
The HS code, the HS code includes both used and new. Unfortunately, there's no differentiation on HS code level.
Because if
Yeah.
it goes to customs, then it has to.
Yeah, it's the same HS code. We had some other
I
questions?
was just thinking in terms of trying to understand why the Republic of Korea had such a competitive advantage going into Pakistan and figure out what their value proposition was, if you could kind of extrapolate, like if Pakistan is buying the bulk of their goods from the Republic of Korea, there's a reason for it.
Yeah, yeah. And then you look up and you go look up the manufacturers and you see what their value proposition, what their the prices are. Yeah.
In terms of trying to develop.
And obviously, I think South Korea is the closest to Pakistan. Actually, China is close to it. But yeah, China is not.
Actually, I think the largest partner is not as a world instead of any specific country. So what is the change? Oh, that's the
World is total. World is total.
also it's just like some of the
Yes, exactly.
below
Exactly.
several
Yeah.
items.
Yeah, you can copy it and paste into Excel and play with it. If you hit this button, download CSV, you will actually get more information because this is very basic. Now, here's the important thing. That's another interesting observation. You see, you have the total volume here in dollars, in US dollars, and you have the number of items. Now, can you tell me how to calculate the price of an item? Divide one by the other, right? And this is how you understand what's the kind of average ballpark price that Pakistani importers are willing to pay for the product. Yeah.
So how accurate is this data? Like, what's the source? Who?
Customs in all countries that UN, all UN countries. So it's 100% accurate.
If you have to report 100% of this.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It may be a little bit outdated if you look like 2016, but if you look 2015, it's pretty accurate. And the past, it's pretty accurate. And HS codes, yeah, HS codes don't change, so it will always be accurate. Now let's change the countries a little bit and let's see whether Canada exports this particular type of machinery and where. All right. So we change the reporting country to Canada. We leave partners as is, and we just change the flow to export. And with a little bit of luck. Okay, so we've got some data, and let me just sort it. Okay. So the majority of Canadian export of this type of machine is the United States. It's not a surprise. I believe around 80% of Canadian trade, Canadian exports go to the United States. I mean, it was always the case, and I think it will always be the case, despite some attempts to destroy NAFTA. hopefully they won't destroy it, but nevertheless. But if you are thinking of exporting this type of machinery, and if you are exporting this type of machinery, this may be a very good insight for you, because yes, you can probably export it to the US, but this database gives you an idea on what other countries you can export to. And surprisingly, I see now Pakistan here.
Can I ask you a question? Could that be the reason because Canada usually mostly use the U.S. ports and data that has been collected by the U.S. ports or?
No, not really. The way they collect the data is so they take in the customs documentation and they take the HS code, the country of origin, and the country of destination. So it can travel all across the world, but those two things don't change. I mean, there's probably some kind of data issue here. I mean, to be honest, not as I'm not the one who developed this, so I mean, we can probably investigate more into that, why we didn't see Canada in the first place, but no. Anyways, this is what it is.
What does the row flag mean? Flag.
Flag. Flag means, I believe, if you download the file, there are some comments, and maybe actually those comments, I believe it was somewhere here. Ah, there we go. Flag. This is what flags are. Yeah. Yeah. So probably those flags may tell you why we didn't see Canada when we look up Pakistan. Or maybe it's just a data delay, I don't know. But even though I mean we see that it may not be like 100% accurate, it's still a good source of information, and it still gives you a good idea of what are your target source market or target export market. And in that worksheet on the first page, what you see actually is the list of 10 markets that you put in here after you look up the Comtrade database. So you complete this exercise and you put a list of your either top export markets or your top source markets. If anybody wants to do it right now, please do. And if anyone wants to look up another product, I believe we have some time, so I think we can do one more. All right, well, you can do it at your leisure. It's not necessary to do it now, but at least I am giving you away the practical tool, practical worksheet that you can fill up and figure out your target export or source market. And the last 3 pages is a step-by-step tutorial how to use Comtrade database. Okay? Now, this is not it, so this is not the only step to identify your priority markets. You also see here in the worksheet, the second one is to look up at your connections. And basically what I suggest is to take a blank sheet of paper, you cut it in half, and on the left side you put the names of everybody you personally know that are somehow related to your product or maybe related to your product that you trade. And on the right side, there are markets where they have experience. The reason why you do that is because international trade is not really about logistics, bills of trading, letters of credit. Of course, it's all technicalities. But if you cannot sell your product, then there's no international trade. So by putting that list together, by putting the list of your connections together, you'll have a list of those potential either buyers or suppliers, or those people who can give you the access to either the buyers or suppliers. Our recommendation is to write the list of people that you physically met, or maybe you studied with them, or you knew them before. We don't recommend to go with your Facebook friends, rather with physical friends, if I may use this term. Because again, in the end, it's all about connections and relationships. And if your connection of your friend or your family member can lead you to the buyer or to the supplier, then you pretty much have a deal done. Make sense? Step number 3, exercise number 3, is to list top 5 countries where you are familiar with the business culture and where you speak the language. Especially it's useful in negotiation process, because if you are familiar with the culture of a particular market, it will be easier for you to sell the product, or it will be easier for you to buy the product there and negotiate. And again, you list top markets where you are familiar, you either speak the language of the market, or you are familiar with the business culture of that market. For example, anyone's aware of business culture in Japan? They have a unique business culture. Even if they will speak English with you, you still have to know some nuances. Middle East, very nuanced territory as far as negotiation. Anyone have experience with negotiating outside of Canada? I'm sure you do. At least one of you should. Yes. Which country?
I was negotiating with some Russian buyers of used forestry equipment.
And was that in English, I guess?
There was, at points, we had a translator involved in it. But I think they fully understood what we were saying. It's just, I believe that it was a negotiation tactic to have the translator there, because it would give them time to think about their response and then run it through the translator. So.
Right. And I would imagine that you probably were also requested or asked to give a discount.
So
Yes.
This may not be in a business context specifically, but I know, for instance, like just last Sunday, I was getting a reproach because I tend to cross my arms, and in our culture that means I'm listening to in African culture, but then here it means I'm mad. So or like it means that I'm bored or something. So we want to be careful because business culture is really just a lot of things. And I learned when I was studying international business, I also learned that in some countries, for instance, I think it's Ireland, and no offense really to any Irish. So when you go to the restaurant, I think you have to say yes when they offer you a drink, or like, and I think it's in the same country when you go to the restaurant, you have to finish eating at the same time. So if you're eating and then if you're done and the person is still eating, you have to order. Like pretty much you have to finish eating at the same time. Otherwise it can be offensive. So, and I know that also in China, I heard that, what is it called?
I think you gotta leave, right? You gotta leave something. You're not supposed to eat everything, right?
Yeah, well, no, you're supposed
right?
to finish eating at the same time.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And in China, they really big on happy hour as well. That's what we heard here in the books that we studied, that you have you can really decline. I mean, that's actually where like the whole thing happens, the whole business happens. So you want to go to happy hour as well instead of refraining from that. So it's just a few examples of how different we may function.
Yeah, I'll share with you my biggest observation about Canadian business culture, because before I came here, I was kind of thinking that it's similar to the US, where it's more business, but as you most of you probably notice, more relationship versus business. And my other observation is that people in Canada don't say no. They don't say no. They rather pretend that they don't know you, but they won't say.
Wow.
Yeah, but this is part. I mean, this is a part of the culture. It's a nuance that you have to know, and I mean, there's nothing good or bad in it. It's just the nuance of the country where you're trying to sell to, or where you are importing from. Yeah.
However, I think it's really hard for us to have this kind of culture inside 5 countries.
Oh, no, it's up to 5 countries.
Yeah. Culture inside.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. The size of the market doesn't matter, and the number of markets doesn't matter. If it's just one market, that's fine.
Just like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't have to be 5. No. Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right, and if no other questions, step 4, list 5 markets where, to the best of your knowledge, your product is the most competitive. The proper way, of course, to answer this question is to conduct the export market research, but it takes quite a long time. So if you want to like a quick exercise before you dive deep and before you do the export market research, you just list based on your experience, based on your best knowledge, and based on your best guess, in which countries your product is the most competitive. And when we talk about competitiveness, once again, remember that it's not only about the price, it's also about quality, it's also about delivery, the delivery timeline, guarantee, shelf life, and so forth. So the competitiveness is really broad definition, and please think outside just price. Okay. Now, after you've done all those 4 exercises, the exercise 5 is the consolidation of what you've done in the past. So basically what you need to do is you need to list those markets that appear the most in your other exercises and calculate how many times this particular market appeared in those 4 exercises. Let's say if US appeared 3 times versus France appeared 2 times, then you have better chances succeeding in the United States. However, if you happen to know somebody in Iceland who is interested to buy the product, you may have better chances selling to Iceland versus US. The reason I'm bringing it up is just I had that example a couple of months ago at the conference where I was doing kind of the same the same presentation, and the gentleman told his story. He's selling kind of locks, some kind of locks, specialty locks, and his number one market is the United States, but he knew somebody in Iceland who was interested in his product, personally knew that gentleman, and there you go, he exported his product to Iceland. And then that same gentleman gave him the contact in Norway. So my point is, again, international trade is really about connections and building relationships. And if we're talking a little outside of the scope of this presentation, but I firmly believe that the number one skill that you should have to succeed in international trade is your ability to sell and market your product. Because the logistics is something that you can either quickly learn or outsource. Right? You don't have to, for example, fill out the customs declaration. There are other professionals who can help you to do so. But nobody can really replace you in your ability to market and sell your product. Yes?
Yeah, sometimes we miss what you say. Can you speak a little bit louder?
Oh, sure. My point was that in order to succeed in international trade, your key ability has to be to market and sell your product. Because logistics is not a problem. Customs is not a problem. You can either learn how to do that, or you can outsource it. But I don't imagine that you can outsource the ability to market and sell your product. Any questions on the worksheet and how we do that?
I would like to know for people who want to start international trade, but that for now they don't know in which area they want to do business. Personally, it would be with Africa because I see a lot of potential there as mining, as really agriculture, etc. But what type of advice, what is the obstacle in international trade? What is the good part and the bad? Because this is good to have all the steps to create your business, how to do research. It's very helpful. And it's a good exercise, actually. That's what I was telling to my friend. But as a person, young person who want to get involved in this type of business, because it's international trade, and it's between two countries, two cultures, and two different laws. And how did you, because I think that you are international trader, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so based on your experience, what type of advice can you give to us here as a woman as well? Because I know women is not really, like in international business, we are not like men are more present than women. So women who want to get there in this business world, what type of advice and what?
I can kind of retaliate, rephrase what I recommended just before. Once again, the key is your ability to sell and market the product. So if there's any advice that I can give on that, except for those steps that you take to identify your product and find your markets, is to learn anything you can about how to sell and how to market.
But if I might add, so the trade commissioners, the Canadian trade commissioners often have offices in most countries around the world. And if you contact them and let them know about your product, then they can give you a lot of in-market advice about, so it's a great way to start in terms of, so you want to contact a trade commissioner in the country, the Canadian trade commissioner in the country you are thinking of exporting to. So they can give you a lot of advice. I know from my work where I come from, the province will often have trade missions. So you see if your provincial trade office has any missions to Africa, and then how you can get involved and be a participant. And then they will generate leads for you, and you can go on that mission and meet prospective customers and get that sort of one-on-one life. The research, of course, is key because you want to go armed.
Sure. Exactly. Thank you so much for your answer.
Speaking of trade commissioner, what you also have in your handouts, and it's just for your homework, you have that little brochure, if you will, that's called Where You Can Find the Buyers and Suppliers. And please familiarize with it as soon as possible to avoid costly mistakes, and please don't try to find your buyers or suppliers on Google or LinkedIn or Alibaba or whatever. Start with some trusted tools and organizations who can actually give you the warm introductions and